Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on Destination India, Opportunities for Your Business. We're really happy to have so many of you here today, and I can see more and more participants signing in. Before we begin, I'd just like to introduce our speakers to you. We have Mr. Ajay Bisaria, who is the India's High Commissioner to Canada from India. And he's going to be speaking on the economy and the Indian economy and opportunities for entrepreneurs there. We have Mr. Sandeep Goyal, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of ICICI Bank Canada, one of India's largest private sector banks. And we have Mr. Murli Nedungadi, who was the former Regional Director for Global Initiatives at the BDC. And Ned has taken many Canadian companies into international markets, leave alone India. To introduce myself, my name is Arvind Raj. I'm the Principal Consultant of Indigo Consulting. Indigo Consulting has operations both in Canada and India. We have offices in both these locations and a team of management consultants both in Canada and India. And we have a team of associates in Europe and the United States as well. And the main goal of Indigo Consulting is to assist companies in going overseas. We are roster consultants to the Business Development Bank of Canada. We also work with the federal government on their consulting initiatives. The federal government has a program called Unlocking Growth, which is a domestic program for Canadian companies, where we assist in helping Canadian companies grow domestically. And we, of course, work independently with a whole slew of clients from across Canada. I'd like to start today's presentation with a short presentation on India. And from there, we're going to ask the High Commissioner to speak. And once the High Commissioner has his speech, we're moving on to Sandeep, who will be talking about ICICI Bank. It'll come back to me at that point where I'll talk a little more in detail about Indigo Consulting Services, what we can do for you, and federal government funding that's available for companies that are looking at exploring international markets. So without much further ado, let's get started with our destination to India. So to introduce India to those of you who don't know India, India is the second largest country in the world by population, with an estimated population of 1.35 billion. It's the fifth largest country in the world by GDP, by nominal GDP. In terms of purchasing power parity, India is number 3. India happens to be the world's largest democracy. And interesting fact for entrepreneurs, India has the second largest English-speaking population in the world. The language of business in India is English. Another interesting fact, more than 80% of the population is below the age of 44. Therefore, you have a young, vibrant, aspirational population. And India has a middle class of over 400 million people, which exceeds the population of the United States. To just show those of you who don't know India a brief map on India. This is a map that you see of India. It's a peninsula with ports on both the western side and the eastern side as well. The commercial capital of India, Mumbai, is here to the west. The political capital of New Delhi is there in the north. In the south, we have the 3 primary cities of Bangalore, Chennai, and Hyderabad. And of course, in the east, we have Calcutta, or as it's better known, the City of Joy in the east. So those of you who don't know India, the government in India runs exactly the same way the government in Canada runs, where the Prime Minister, in this case, Mr. Narendra Modi, is the elected head of the government. Moving on to the Indian economy, in 1947, when India got independence, it was typically an agrarian economy. But today, India's economy mirrors that of all the advanced economies in the West, where 61% of our GDP comes from services, 23% comes from the manufacturing sector, and about 15% from agriculture. We're going to share this PPT with all those of you who have joined in today. So the statistics that I have are something that you can look at your leisure. The one point that I'd like to bring out is the fact that Canada and India at present have a trading relationship of about $5 billion US. Many Canadian entrepreneurs have asked us over the years, what kind of infrastructure does India have? How would it be able to handle my products and services? How do I do business with India? Well, to answer your question, we've got some information here on our infrastructure. India already has more than 100 operational airports, domestic and international. The New Delhi airport is the 12th busiest in the world. India will become the 3rd busiest airline hub by 2024. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also launched the Udan scheme recently, which has the ambitious plan of setting up another 100 airports across the country by 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, please note, 100% foreign direct investment is allowed both for greenfield and brownfield projects. Moving on to railways, India has the largest railway network in Asia and the 3rd largest network in the world. India's railways transports 25 million passengers a day, which means every 2 days it transports more than the entire population of Canada. And it also transports about 3 million metric tons of products every single day. The railway sector, again, is a sector where 100% FDI is allowed. And therefore, those of you who are in this sector, please do give it your consideration. Highways, the 2nd largest road network in the world. India is blessed with an amazing national highways network, which connects the length and breadth of the country. But within each state, the states have their own state highway networks and rural highway networks that connect smaller towns and villages with the larger cities. Here again, there is a 100% FDI opportunity available for entrepreneurs that work in this space. Moving on to ports of India. As I showed you earlier, India is a peninsula. We've got an amazing set of ports both in the east and the western parts of the country. 13 major ports in India and 187 intermediate ports. And these ports handle 95% of India's trading by volume, 70% of India's trade by value. In terms of telecom, here comes the opportunity for all those of you who are in software space. India has the 2nd largest number of telecom subscribers in the world at 1.14 billion subscribers. Of this, 502 million are already smartphone users. This is expected to increase in the next 2 to 3 years to reach 800 million users. Even with regard to the internet, you can see that India has more than 700 million internet users. And if you recall, I had told you earlier that India has a young population. There is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs who are looking at sectoral opportunities in education, online gaming, media, mobile applications, software applications. And of course, those of you who are in telecom hardware or internet hardware, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity available. I'd like to move on quickly to sectoral opportunities, going into 3 broad sectors. Manufacturing. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like those of you who are in manufacturing and who are looking at a hub outside Canada, please do look at India very seriously. We have a tremendous pool of young, trained talent available. The Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and his government have launched the Make in India initiative. And please do note, this is not just for the manufacturing sector, it is also for the services sector. So please do spend some time. There is a separate website for Make in India. Please do have a look at that and see the different policy measures that the government has in place. I can tell you more when we have a one-on-one at a later stage. In terms of software and services, the services sector is a robust sector growing at 6 to 8% on the average per annum. The government allows 100% foreign direct investment in tourism, education, aviation, healthcare, and telecom. Here again, there is a large pool of skilled talent available at a relatively low cost. So please do consider that as well. And when we come to agriculture, it's definitely last but not the least. The agriculture sector in India, if you look at the sector, India is the largest producer of several fruits and vegetables, as you can see in this chart. It's the second largest producer of staples like wheat and rice. There are tremendous opportunities available for those of you who are in food processing, who are in the agricultural sector, sectors like in seeds, the supply of seeds, fertilizers, the cold storage chain, and the warehousing chain. And anybody who's into the manufacture of consumer products and consumer food products in specific, there are great supply opportunities from India. Bilateral trade, at the moment, as I said, we're at $5 billion in bilateral trade. We want this to triple between the two countries to about $15 billion in the next 5 years. Canada and India are working very closely together on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. And you can see this picture here with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Mr. Trudeau together. India and Canada have had the best of relationships. Canada also earns a lot of foreign exchange from the number of Indian students who have been coming in, and Indian students will continue to be, this will be the #1 destination for many Indian students. Canada's exports to India, these are the primary exports from Canada to India at present. It starts with mineral products being the largest segment, precious stones as second, chemical products and paper products at #3 and #4. And lastly, I'd just like to highlight what the Canadian federal government shows as potential sectors of opportunity in India. It's information and communication technology, infrastructure, the energy sector, agriculture, food chain supply, food products and fertilizers, higher education, of course, as I just mentioned earlier, and oil and gas equipment. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all again for having come for this presentation. I will talk more about Indigo services at a later part of this webinar, but for now, I would like to pass on the mic to Mr. Ajay Bisaria, India's High Commissioner to Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Erwin, for that wonderful presentation. And let me start by welcoming everyone to this webinar and thank Indigo Consulting and Erwin Raj for helping put it together. And thank you also to ICICI Bank and Mr. Sandeep Goel and Mr. Murli Nedungari for spearheading this initiative. I think we are living through extraordinary times, and the reason we all recognize these extraordinary times, we know that in these pandemic times, the focus of business is on survival. And we understand this, but the fact that there is an appetite for a webinar of this nature means that we are also all beginning to look at post-pandemic times and beginning to look at how the recovery will be in 2021, what shape it will have, and what opportunities it presents for business, and particularly in the India-Canada economic corridor. So I think this is something that we all share in common, that we will live through these extraordinary times, these pandemic times, but we will build better. And that is what I think drives the intention of having a conversation such as this. What I thought I'd do, since Erwin has covered so well the basic ground of introducing you to the Indian economy and the Indian the ambitions of the Indian economy, I thought I'll talk a little bit about the current pandemic and the public health situation, particularly in India, and then go on to the economic crisis that we are going through and the policy responses, and then speak of some of the India-Canada opportunities that we sense will emerge at the other end of this crisis and even during it. Well, if you look at India's management of the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been an effective management, successful management. We had the biggest lockdown in the world right in the beginning, with 5 weeks of a complete lockdown of 1.3 billion people. But that helped us ramp up the capacity to deal with this crisis, with 18,000 centers today, more than 1 million tests, and we could avoid some of the nightmare scenarios of people lining up in beds in hospitals. We, with a population of 1.3 billion today, the caseload in India always looks like a high number. All the numbers about India, the scale is quite enormous. But if you look at today's rate of infections, it's 9.2 million, which means about 0.7% of the population has been infected, which is roughly the same as in Canada. In Canada, you have 0.9% of the population infected, and compare that to the US, which is 3% or more. So the caseload is not as high as it could have been, and would have produced a nightmare scenario. The daily number of cases is about 44,000. Compare that to Canada, which is about 4,800. And it is much less than it was about half of the average of a month ago. Now, I think the domestic response has been very effective with the recovery rate that is 92, 93%. But the good news has been that the fatality rate in India has been low at about 1.5%, about half the world average. Compare that to over 3% in Canada. So India is essentially learning to live with the virus and to open up its economy while we live through these pandemic times. And of course, the attention now, like everywhere in the else in the world, is on the vaccine and the solution. And India, like other countries like Canada, is developing its own vaccines. There is also the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is going to be manufactured in India. But the big picture there is that no matter where the vaccine is produced, the scaling up of the vaccine to provide vaccines to the world will be done in India, where we will have the capacity to provide perhaps 60% of global requirements. So India, which has till now been a pharmacy of the world in terms of the number of drugs being exported globally, 150 countries received drugs from India even during the pandemic, is now moving to a situation where it could be the vaccine maker of the world. So this is something where India has rapidly evolved itself into a major exporter now of ventilators and PPE kits and diagnostic kits and so on, to have a nimble reaction to these times. The interesting thing is that India also happens to be open for business. So despite the pandemic, we have air bubble agreements with a large number of countries. Flights from India to Canada, you have about 8 a week, and we are giving business visas for all those who want to travel. We are not advocating tourism at this point, but essential business travel is going on, and a lot of Canadian businessmen are traveling to India. When we look at the global economic crisis, again, we can't but face that what we are going through is a once in 100-year kind of crisis, comparable to the Great Depression, which followed the Spanish flu of 1920. But what we are seeing now is predictions of contractions this year globally. The global economy will contract 4.5%. That's what the IMF says. And so will a lot of major economies. But uh, the next year is going to be a year of recovery, and the prediction is of a 6% recovery in the Indian economy. We hope that's true, and that India leads a V-shaped recovery out of this crisis. We are hoping to become an economy that leads many of the other G20 economies in leading the revival of the global economy. Already, we've seen some positive signs in the Indian economy. In September and October, we had encouraging numbers. Agriculture did well. Some demand and consumption did go up. And we had a situation of normalcy in the trade front, on the travel front, on the mobility front. But of course, it is a crisis, and there is a problem in the employment-oriented informal economy, which has faced a crisis. But what we've done is negotiated about 21 air bubble agreements. India is an advocate on the global stage of greater mobility, of as much mobility as many countries that are going through a second wave of the pandemic can permit. And we are welcoming all these initiatives to have a economic recovery, not just in India, but across the globe through the kind of trade and mobility exchanges that we can have. When we look into India's reforms and India's economic story, Irwin has already spoken of the basics of where India stands. And so I would just focus on some of the big picture points. The first is that the reform story of India, which really began in 1991, has accelerated in recent years. And if you look at the indices, the ease of doing business for India of the World Bank placed India at 142 in 2014. Since then, about 1,400 laws have been eliminated, rules have been simplified, mindsets changed. And now we had an incredible jump of 79 places to number 63 in 2019. The Prime Minister Modi gave a stated objective to the bureaucracy, to the Indian government, that we should try and move into the top 50 easy investment climate countries, and we are headed in that direction. We also have a very healthy competition now going on between Indian states. So you would hear of ease of doing business comparison of different Indian states, where Gujarat would compete with Telangana, would compete with Maharashtra. So each Indian state is offering itself as an investment destination. And the numbers are speaking for themselves. So the FDI regime, which was liberalized, had a record investment pre-pandemic till March 2020 of $74 billion annually. And this is something that we fortunately saw even in pandemic times, investments of over $20 billion, particularly in India's digital future, with companies like Microsoft and Google investing in the digital Indian economy and the digital future of India. Two of the biggest reforms we've seen are in GST, goods and service tax. The idea was to have a one India, one tax kind of unification, and a bankruptcy code that made business easier. We also had a real estate regulation act that disciplined the construction sector and helped monetize a lot of real estate assets. So if you look at the Indian stimulus, and all major economies have given a stimulus, it's comparable to Canada's. It's 10% odd of the GDP was given to the economy as a stimulus. We are in the middle of the third stimulus packet. It's being called Stimulus 3.0, which is trying to help, in particular, small and medium enterprises, and it is trying to create employment and investment support for the economy. But the interesting bit about the Indian reform stimulus package is that it was not just a fiscal and a monetary stimulus, but also a deep structural reform stimulus. So the Indian stimulus came embedded with deep structural reforms, which we were planning to do anyway. The idea was to never waste a good crisis and move on to a situation where we could build back better. And you saw reforms across the board in land, labor, in laws, in financial regulations, in liquidity, and in also sectors like health, agriculture, in education particularly, and sectorally, a special focus on the small and medium sector. And all this was reinforced by an acceleration to India's digital future, uh, hoping that we benefit from technology and leapfrog into the future. 400 million bank accounts have been created. That was unprecedented. And also 1.2 billion unique identities, 1.2 billion cell phones. By the end of the decade, we will have 800 million smartphones in India. The scale of the digital revolution is absolutely enormous. So what we have today is, in the latest stimulus package, is a lot of production linked incentives, particularly for manufacturing in the mobile phone sector, in pharmaceuticals, in medical equipment. And these are making a lot of difference. There is a certain shifting of supply chains that we are seeing, particularly in mobile phones. And we are also extending these production linked incentives to what we call sunrise sectors or champion sectors, which include auto and auto components, pharmaceuticals, telecoms, which Irwin mentioned, and batteries and so on. So it's a very, very ambitious stimulus, hoping to accelerate the entire recovery process. There are credit lines to stress sectors, and the ambition remains intact for this 2.8 or $3 trillion economy to become a $5 trillion economy in the next 5 years, and a $10 trillion economy in the next 15 years. So the hope remains of a recovery and a movement to double-digit growth. Which brings me to the bilateral India-Canada economic corridor. I've been High Commissioner here now for 8 months, and have had a series of conversations across Canada with businesses. And my one big takeaway is that Canadian companies know India, and they are strongly asserting confidence in India's medium-term prospects. The companies that are already there are hugely confident of the returns India's economy will produce. Uh, India and Canada declared a strategic partnership when Prime Minister Modi came to Canada in 2015. And the big headline of this strategic partnership has been the portfolio investment, or the investment by investment firms in India, which has gone up from $5 billion in 2014 to more than $60 billion now. So the biggest investor in India, biggest investor, is no longer BlackRock of the US, it is Brookfield of Canada. So that alone has a portfolio of $19 billion. So there have been many champions who have believed in the India story, made these investments, and are getting these huge returns, which are in the mid-teens compared to many other markets. These are very, very healthy returns. And what we are getting from Canada is patient capital. It is coming in, as Irwin pointed out, in infrastructure, in logistics, in real estate, in energy. So all long-term areas of growth. And I think it's a symbol of the faith that Canada and Canadian companies have shown in the Indian economy. If you see infrastructure alone, there is a huge ambition of a $1.4 trillion pipeline till 2024 in the next 5 years. And again, if you see the plans till 2040, in the next 20 years, we are talking of a $4.5 trillion opportunity with all its knock-on corollary effects. And what we have from the Canadian large companies is an investment which we value deeply. And it is for that reason that the Prime Minister of India spoke at a special session with Canadian business last month. And he praised and admired the maturity of Canadian companies which have been in India for more than 10 years and making these returns and becoming a sort of role model for many other investors. Even in pandemic times, we are collaborating closely. The prime ministers have been in touch. We've been in touch on issues of vaccines, of issues of pharmaceuticals, of diagnostics during pandemic. And we've been in conversation on the future. So the foreign ministers have been speaking, the trade ministers have been speaking. We are talking of an economic cooperation agreement, an early harvest trade agreement. We've been talking of an investment protection agreement, all this to provide a certain infrastructure and to give greater confidence to business. So I think we have overall a situation of an India which is hoping to get into a phase of a V-shaped recovery, and an India which is welcoming investment, which is changing dramatically, transforming its investment environment, and already seeing some shifts in global supply chains. So this is an India which is expressing complete confidence in multilateralism, in globalization, and in preserving the integrity of supply chains that may be redirected. The last point I would make is what characterizes this special relationship, and I see that from the names on my screen here, is the strong contribution of the Indo-Canadian diaspora. We have 1.6 million Indo-Canadians in key leadership positions in politics, in business, in science, in academia. And this becomes a special driver also of the economic partnership. And this gives us special access and a special understanding of each other. And we are proud to have the support of this. So we have a situation where you have an India that is confidently growing, confident of recovering from this crisis next year, and an India that will rise in the next 20 years as a very responsible global player, which will play by the rules, which will believe in diversity, in democracy, in rule of law, and will provide an increasingly friendly investment climate for partners and become a hub for digital growth, for innovation, for skills, for startups. So this is an India that is looking for partners, and we'll drill down into details in this seminar, but I want to say that this is the best time to get into a partnership with India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bisaria. That was very, very insightful. I now request Sandeep, the President and CEO of ICICI Bank, to tell us a little bit about the financial services sector and ICICI Bank. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you. Thank you, Irwin. What a great way to start the seminar, where I think it is actually well known, the potential of India is well known. And I think His Excellency Mr. Bisaria has enumerated a lot of policy changes, policy enablements which have come. And anybody who plans to go into India, the first thing you need is a bank account. Otherwise, you cannot start the business. We come in there as the largest private sector bank in India. And we are the most recognized financial brand on the Indo-Canada corridor. And when Irwin actually talked to me that we want to do this seminar, I said, okay, I think it will be a great idea to bring like-minded individuals on the same platform and do a helping hand kind of gesture to all companies who are already present in India or have intentions of being present in India. So we are the bank of choice to you. We have almost 20,000 points of presence in India, fully technology enabled. We are within 10-kilometer reach of any living Indian being whom you want to target from your product point of view. First bank to be listed on NYSE, market cap of close to $50 billion, consolidated assets almost $200 billion, investment grade rating from S&P and Moody's. Very good network of correspondent banks. So you, whatever financial services, financial needs you have in India, we are the bank who can basically fulfill all your requirements. We are also a very strategically important financial institution to India, and our stock market movements actually track the movement of Indian economy. We are taken as a harbinger of Indian economy by investment community in North America and the western part of the world. In terms of our presence across the financial spectrum, we are present as a bank, we are present as ICICI Securities, #1 investment banking player in India, to take care of any of your security requirements, any of your investment banking requirements. We are present on the venture side of business through ICICI Ventures, ICICI Prudential AMC, leading asset management company in collaboration with Prudential of UK. We are #1 private sector life insurance company in India. We are #1 private sector general insurance company in India through ICICI Prudential and ICICI Lombard. ICICI Home Finance, we are the largest lender on home loans or mortgages in India with 2 lakh crores funded. So we have a very high franchise value within India. Anybody thinking of India, INDIA, I always tell you, please think of ICICI. We are the acronym for India. In terms of our global footprint, we are present across 18 countries in high density India corridors. India-Canada is a very strategically important corridor for the bank. As I think Irwin mentioned, as Mr. Bisari also mentioned, bilateral trade is around $10 billion, expected to double, triple as we go through the negotiations of SIPA. And very good investment climate, very good governance, very good economic opportunities in India. In terms of ICICI Canada, we are present in Canada since 2003, 17 years of presence in Canada, whole spectrum of financial services, corporate, retail, mortgages, and we are a very unique bank in terms of very technology savvy, very innovation focused. We work with our clients to make things happen. So we are not off the shelf kind of banker. We work with you, we'll customize the products to you. There will be a dedicated relationship manager which will get tied to you to handhold you within Canada, to handhold you into India, and any kind of services you need, we can work together. Just to touch upon the specific audience here in terms of companies who are interested to go into India, we can assist you to enter India, set up your operations, real estate, HR, legal services, any kind of help you need. I think Indigo is there as our partner. We are going to work with Indigo. Any regulatory matters in India, we have a big network of local feet on street which can take care of all your requirements, all your banking facilities from corporate, trade, retail, any requirements that we can take care of. Any kind of collaborations you're looking for, any kind of market participants you're looking for, their credit signed off by the bank. So any counterparty risk, which is a big risk in any business in a new market, is taken care of by the bank. So these are validated counterparties by the bank. And any other ancillary services you need into India, the bank can come in, given our history of almost 60 years of partnership with Indian growth. Trade finance, very strong expertise on trade finance, almost 60 correspondent banking relationships across the world, 60 countries we are present through correspondent banking. So in short, we are the bank of choice. Any help, any assistance you need, you can contact us, multiple formats of contact, email, telephone, you can contact us through our website. So please reach out to us and make your dream of India come true. Thank you, Arvind.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. before we continue, I'd just like to add a little bit to what Sandeep just said with regard to ICICI Bank. We run a company in India as well, and we have been banking with ICICI over the last 20 years. I must tell you, Sandeep, that it's been a pleasure working with ICICI in India, both on the corporate level and then also on the personal level. So I can certainly vouch for their services, cross-border services as well. I'd like to move on here to a very quick and brief introduction to Indigo Consulting and what we do. I hope you're all able to see my screen. So Indigo Consulting was actually founded by my father, Dr. Besant Raj, way back in 1979. It's the management consulting business started off in 1979. He was one of the pioneers of business management in India, completed his doctorate from the Harvard Business School, and then went back to India because he wanted to create India's first set of professional managers, so to speak. He is the co-founder of the Institute of Chartered Financial Analysts of India, and throughout his career, spent his entire career consulting with both the government sector and with the private sector, trying to get India as professional as possible. So that was his aim at those years. As far as Indigo Consulting Canada is concerned, we commenced operations in Canada in 2008. As I said earlier, I am an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. My background started off with banking. I'm a banker as well. I started by working with the American Express Bank and then moved on to banking with HSBC in their institutional banking group. And after that, I have been a management consultant ever since, while I started an advertising services company in India. When we came here in 2008, we decided that we'd focus on cross-border consulting because there were many Canadian companies that were looking at India as a destination and weren't sure how to go about entering the Indian market. We started consulting with Canadian companies from 2008. And as luck would have it, we met with the Business Development Bank of Canada. The BDC invited us to join their roster of consultants to be their consultants of choice for India. And over the last 12 years, we've consulted with a slew of clients from across the country. We first started consulting with clients in Toronto, and that kind of expanded across the board to different parts of Canada as well. We have now expanded our services. I will not go into this in detail today, but we also consult with Canadian companies that are looking at going into Europe and the United States. But if anyone would like to know more about that, please do reach out to us. And one interesting factor that I'd like to tell you is that there is Canadian government funding available for our consulting services. I'll come down to that as soon as I complete this next slide, which just talks about very simplistically, what is the 5-step approach that we follow to help clients get into an international market, in this case, India. In the first stage, we do an organization review and readiness assessment. We study your company to see if you really are ready to make that step to go global. Do you have the management bandwidth? Do you have the financial bandwidth? Do you have the right product or service that can really make a dent in that market? Those are the things we study in stage 1. In stage 2, we do a detailed market study of your product or service for the Indian market. And in this case, we look at domestic players, international players, barriers to entry. What's the best way by which you could potentially enter the market? Is your market growing? Is it stagnant? Or is it something that's on the wane? And we come back to you with a market report, which tells you what our findings are on the target market, in this case, India. If you then decide that you'd like to move forward into stage 3, we then work with you on a market entry strategy, which depends on your size, your production capacity, your manpower, your goals. And we agree with you on a certain type of strategy by which we should enter the market. For example, let's say you're a manufacturer of watches and you have an annual sales of, let's say, 5 million, we might recommend to you that why don't you just look for a couple of good distributors in India's largest cities and start there. And then as you grow your business, start looking at expanding into other cities. The next stage, once we decide on a market entry strategy, we get into the part of selecting a partner. And this is the most crucial part, which decides success or failure. So we sit down with our clients and we create a predetermined set of criteria by which that we all agree upon that the partner in India should have. How many years in business? What kind of size is their business? Should the promoters have certain technical qualifications? Should this be, let's say, an engineering industry or a software industry, for example? So we define the criteria and then identify potential partners. And then we arrange for meetings for the clients with those partners. And usually, this is something we highly recommend. We ask the client to come with us into the target market to meet with these partners and make a final decision. Stage 5, commencement and continuity. We work with the bankers like Sandeep. We work with the government of India as well, if we need the government's assistance. And then we help the business start off and start running their business in India. I'd like to conclude by just telling you, Canadian companies, all Canadian companies, that there is federal government funding available for a whole set of services when companies are looking at going overseas. There is a program called Can Export, which is run by the Trade Commissioner Service. In fact, I was speaking with the Chief Trade Commissioner of Canada just 2 days ago, and it's a conversation I would actually like to take up further with the High Commissioner as well. But they fund projects between $20,000 and $100,000, where 75% of your spend is reimbursed by the government. So you spend the money and the government then reimburses you based on the invoices you submit. We'll go into this in more detail. If anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to us later. The criteria for an eligibility criteria is very simple. You must be a for-profit company. You should be incorporated in Canada. You must have a CRA business number. Your revenues should be at least $100,000 and not more than $100 million. And you should not have more than 500 employees. 98% of Canadian companies would fall in this bracket, as you can see. And that's all you would need. As I said, we will give you more details on this subsequently. I'd like to now move on to my colleague, Murli Nedungadi. Murli is an expert at taking Canadian companies into global markets. He has, in fact, written a very interesting book. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's called Access India. If after he speaks, if any of you would like Murli's book, please do reach out to him and he will give that to you. Murli, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Irwin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be on a panel of such distinguished speakers. His Excellency, the High Commissioner, Irwin and Sandeep have all given you a lot of details about the specifics that are going on in business in India today. Over the past 20-something years, I have taken several companies into many markets across the globe, and several Canadian companies, especially SMEs, into the Indian market. What I'd like to talk about are things, not necessarily all the details that really have already been addressed, but what I want to talk to you about is this. It's really very important to know what to do when you go into a new market. But I believe it's imperative to know what not to do when you go into a new market. On this, I want to talk about India. When you talk about India, India is a paradox. Anything you talk about India, anything you say about India is true. Everything you hear about India is possibly untrue. And that is a paradox. It is clean, it is filthy, it's cold, it's warm, it's hot, it's rich, it's poor, it's modern, it's old-fashioned, you name it. But the fact is, today, India is a rapidly growing and evolving economy. Its many needs are creating a huge need for markets and markets for goods and services of astounding range and quantity. The growing middle class of India, as Irwin mentioned, of some 80% is which makes about 400 million people, 80% of them below the age of 44. Now, what you're talking about is a 400 million people is actually more than the combined population of both the United States and Canada today. So you have a lot of opportunities. I want to talk to you about some of the cases, some of the instances where I have helped Canadian companies go to India and they have been successful. Now, a lot of India, it depends on how you perceive India. You may have heard about the old story about the Bata Shoe Company. Many, many years ago, the Thomas Bata is supposed to have sent, the story goes, two young men, two salesmen to Africa. One of them sent a telegram saying, please bring me back home. No one here wears shoes. The other one said, Mr. Bata, please send me 1,000 pairs. Nobody here wears shoes. So it depends on your point of view. It's a perception. Now that is a perception of India. So that is why I say it's a paradox. Today, India is growing at such a rapid pace that everything that you can possibly think of has a market. How do you enter the country? Irwin touched upon it. Is it direct export? Is it sales, agents, distributors? Or is it through a franchise? Do you want to set up your own manufacturing unit, or is it a JV? Now, I want to talk to you about three specific instances, 3 or 4 cases that I feel might add value to your thought process. One of them is a perception. I call it, there is a saying that all that glitters is not gold. I like to say that all gold does not glitter, which is very true for India. I took my client, we call him Tom, who is a manufacturer of specialized material for the stores and store fixtures. We went to Delhi. Now, this is a high value item, and we had already gone through the country, and he had essentially shortlisted 2 or 3 companies in his mind. And when we went to meet this particular company in Delhi, our agents, our consultants on the ground had actually done a thorough research in each one of the people that we were meeting. When we went to meet with these people, the driver actually got lost because it was in a dilapidated area of the city. Eventually, we came to stop in front of a ramshackle building. My client was extremely hesitant about going inside. He wanted to turn around and go back home. And I convinced him that I think it's worthwhile going in, because I said, all gold does not glitter. We went inside. We were welcomed by a young gentleman, very well spoken, obviously very well educated, extremely knowledgeable about the product, who took us on his laptop through a detailed presentation of his company. He told us that his grandfather had begun this company in this little place, in this small workshop. And he always believed that if there is a particular product that he was interested in, he felt it was an auspicious place for him to begin conversation. Now, that is a different perception from any one of us typically hold in a large city. The following day, he invited us to come to his head office, which was in a gleaming tower in Delhi, and later on took us to see his facilities outside of Delhi. We ended up having dinner, and it became an absolutely fortuitous meeting for my client, as well as for the gentleman in Delhi. Today, they have been tied up now for over 11 years, and he is one of the most successful companies, I would imagine, in the small and medium-sized sector in Canada. So today, in fact, every time my client meets somebody and something out of the ordinary happens, he always says, all gold does not glitter. The second one I want to talk to you about is the cultural perception. When we went to see a particular company, for example, when we started talking about India, this another company of mine, they manufacture forklifts, company based out of Ontario, and very seriously interested in India. But when we started talking about it, I was talking to them precisely this: there are thousands of kilometers of roads and highways being constructed. There are residential complexes, multi-storied buildings, and all these constructions are going on. And my client turned around and told me, he said, "Look, are you telling me that you have not enough forklifts to do all this construction?" I said, "Yes, that is true." He said, "So what are you telling me, that they carry cement on their heads?" I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you." So the long and the short of it, we land up in Calcutta. I typically arrived in the country a couple of days before the client. When the clients arrived at about 10 o'clock at night, I took them from the airport directly to a construction site. There, under Klieg lights, you could see a 40-foot container of cement being offloaded by women barefooted, carrying cement on their heads in pans. And I told him, I said, "Look, Robert, you have a choice. You can decide to continue our trip in India, or we can turn around and go back to India." And he said no. He knew that there was a need in India for his particular product, which was articulated forklifts. We went through the country. We met with various people who have been shortlisted by our consultants in the field. Once we did, we companies today in India, and they manufacture it there under license, and they've been extremely successful. Now, one of the things that I want to tell you is it's always very easy to say that I can pick up information on Google, and you have so many information facilities available today on your website that you sometimes many of the Canadian entrepreneurs feel that they don't really need it, including Indo-Canadians who have left the country many years ago and they've been here. They're not. One thing I implore that please understand that India has changed dramatically over the past few years. And when we go on a vacation, what you see in India is not what India is from a business point of view. We need to look at India through Indian eyes rather than Canadian eyes. I want to tell you also the importance of seriously identifying a good consultant and going professional advice. While the Google information is free, I think it is worthwhile. It saves you time, money, and energy going through a good agent. As an example, I once had a client who, in our first meeting, told me that he has got one of his employees, very trusted employee, who was originally from India, and he could find him the ideal agent that he wanted. And this person manufactured very high cost furnaces for several industries. I said, "That's fair enough." And after about 8 months, I got a call. What had happened was he had arrived in India, first of all, on the day before Diwali. He checked into a hotel, tried to connect with the person who was actually a friend of a cousin of his employee, found out that the person is out of station, as they call it, or in other words, out of town, unable to connect with him over 3 days, sitting in a hotel in the middle of Bombay. He gets frustrated, picks up the yellow pages, starts going through it, identifies a company he thought might really fit the bill, which was in Pune, about 200 something kilometers away. Called him up. That person was kind enough. He comes into Bombay. They have dinner together. They struck it. The good accord was struck. They signed a contract. And everything went well. The first order was executed. 6 months down the road, he called me up to say, there are problems. The quality all of a sudden started going down. The price started going up. And I asked him, I said, "How were the facilities?" And believe it or not, this gentleman had flown 4,000 something kilometers going into India, but did not want to take that extra 200 kilometers into Pune. Never seen the site. He went because he was a friend of a friend, which is fine. But what had happened was this particular person in Pune was actually subcontracting his products. I had to go with the client into the country, engage lawyers, untie the contract that they had entered into, which was a long process. So the point I'm making is it's worthwhile investing in good information. in a new country, especially a country as complex as India. And the last thing I want to tell you is the importance of going as an entrepreneur. If you are sitting in Canada, and even if you have good business going on with India, make it a point to go and visit the country on a regular basis. A client of mine, we'll call her Valerie, and she is an extremely successful person in India, in Canada, and she had been doing business for 10 to 15 years in India. When I was first introduced to her, she wanted to know about different markets, and we talked about it. And then she told me that she'd been doing business in India, and she's been doing business in India with very large corporations, the likes of Larsen and Toubro, to give you an example, really big companies. So I said, okay, I can do a preliminary test just to see what kind of business we are doing. Found out that she was really getting only about 10% of her total potential. So I asked her, do you know why? She does not know. She said that she had never been in 15 years into India. That's a market that's been giving her a lot of business. I suggested to her that she comes with me to India and we go and meet some of our clients, which we did. We traveled the length and breadth of the country. And one of the first things we found out was that most of our clients thought that her sales manager was actually the owner of the company. What he had done was he had set up a company under the same name and given out the cards which called him the CEO and president of the company. We had to, it was a huge rigmarole. Obviously, the gentleman is no longer with working for them. But, and then we went back, and now today she's well tied up and ensconced in the country, doing really good business. And she is a regular visitor to India, and to such an extent that she actually wears saris when she walks around in the city. So these are some of the stories that I'm telling you this because, as I said, it is important to know what to do, but it's imperative to know what not to do. Once again, as the High Commissioner mentioned earlier on, this pandemic will go by. This too shall pass. But when it does, India will rise. And I think, and I believe strongly that those of us who take this chance, that take advantage and get into the country the right way, and all kinds of help and assistance is available today. Those of us who do it will succeed immeasurably. Thank you very much. Irvin?
Thank you, Ned, for the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the presentation today. We'll now move on to the question and answer session. We have received a few questions from some of you. In case you'd like to ask the panelists any specific questions, please use the chat button at the bottom of the screen. In case you would like to reach out to us one-on-one, I would share my screen and you would be able to get in touch with us. I encourage you to jot down our email address and the contact information as you would see on the screen. Okay, now on to the questions. The first question I have is for Mr. Bisaria. Are there any specific initiatives that are being planned for importing packaged food products into India? This is a question from Mr. Kamlesh.
Okay, I think I am audible now. I have just unmuted myself. On this specific one, I will really have to get back because I'd rather come back to you with very specific details on, and the question is on packaged food and whether there is any restriction. Is that correct?
Yes, it says imported packaged food products into India.
Yes, so we are not aware of any restrictions at this point. I'm presuming the question is in the context of pandemic, whether there is any additional restriction. So there is none. We are a major importer of processed and packaged food. But if there's any specific point that you'd like to check on the specific kind of food, whether you're talking about marine products or cooked products, or whichever category, please let us know. Email it to us. We will get you the exact answer to that question.
Yogi, could I just add a little to what Mr. Bisaria said?
For sure.
With regard to that question, we did have a client in food products, packaged food products, who was trying to bring their products into India. So there is a Government of India body called the Food Safety Standards Association of India, which governs this, the packaging and the types of, the way in which the packaging should be displayed, the nutrition information, etc. So to the gentleman who asked the question, he can connect with us later, and I can put him on to somebody at the FSSAI body who can advise him more in specific with regard to the packaging requirements.
Thank you, Erwin and Mr. Bisaria. The next question I have is from Rob. He's perhaps Ned or Erwin could answer this. He says, we are a nutraceutical company from Southwest Ontario and have been present in the Indian market for 2 years now through a pan-India distributor. Based on our market research, we know there is a demand for our product, but we have not been very successful in terms of sales. Do you have any recommendations for business like ours?
May I answer, Erwin?
Yes, please.
From what I understood, Yogi, what you just said was that they have been in operation for the past couple of years in India?
Yes, that's what he says.
And they have one agent, is that it?
Yes.
India-wide. My suggestion is, of course, obviously, I do not know this agent. I'm sure is good and that you have done the due diligence. If you feel that your market share is lower than what you should be getting, as I said before, and you have probably been to India, you would know that India, you can actually divide it into 4 specific parts, and even then not specifically divided in terms of language, etc. But the thing is, the needs are different in the north versus the south versus west and east. So it may be wise to have 1 or 2 or more agents, but that would depend strictly on what the client's needs are. But we would be very happy to talk about it further if you like. And you can forward your questions to us and we can exchange our coordinates. Yogi?
Sure. And the next question, Erwin, is from Vic. He asks, he or she asks that, have you worked with any companies outside of Ontario in the West?
We have worked with many companies, yes, outside of Ontario. In fact, even with the BDC, we first started by working with clients in Ontario, in the GTA to start with. That kind of expanded to other parts of Ontario. Then we moved into working with clients in Quebec. And we have also worked with a couple of companies in Vancouver, in BC. And we have worked with 2 or 3 companies, I think, in Calgary, who are actually in education space. So again, we work across sectors and we worked across geographies as well.
Yes, and just to add to that, Erwin, we have done a lot of work in, for example, in Alberta, whether BC, Quebec, or Ontario. And like you said, it's really industry agnostic and product agnostic. So it doesn't matter what your product is and what your industry is, and we do work across the board.
And the next question, I don't have a name, it just says iPhone. This question, probably Mr. Bisaria or Ned can take it. It says, we are a Canadian instrumentation company. We are interested in outsourcing part of our production process to Asian markets and are currently considering India and a couple of Southeast Asian countries. We are mainly concerned about intellectual property theft. What kind of safeguards can we expect in India for IP protection?
Well, India has very, very strong intellectual property regulations, and these compare very favorably to those in other parts of Asia as well. But on the very specific question of the intellectual property regulations in instrumentation, perhaps I defer to someone who has more knowledge of it, or we could certainly get back with specific sector-specific information.
Thank you, Mr. Visaria. And the next question can be directed to Sandeep. It says we are a Canadian company and we source some of our products from India. I'm wondering what kind of exchange rates does ICICI Canada provide? We currently do our foreign transactions through a Canadian chartered bank.
Okay, so I think, see, exchange rates, I think it will be comparable to any of the big banks or any of your existing banks. But the other thing is in terms of timing also, since we are the largest rupee converter, and naturally so because we are the Indian bank. So on the INR trade, we can actually get you a good rate, comparable rate, but timing also in terms of when to convert. So given the fact that we understand both the rupee markets and dollar markets in Canada, so we can be of big assistance to you. So please get in touch with us.
And the next question, perhaps Mr. Visaria could take it. We are a company that's looking to set up a manufacturing base in India. What is the starting point for a company like ours? You were talking about competition among Indian states. Do Indian states have specific incentives for foreign manufacturers? How do we get in touch with them?
Excellent. I think this is exactly what this seminar was about. So you have a menu of options before you. You could be talking to a consultant here. You could be talking to ICICI Bank and all the organizers of this seminar. You could also write to us. And if you wish to go directly, and if you've done your diligence and would like to identify a state, each Indian state has an investment promotion body. For instance, there's Invest Punjab. In Punjab, there is a special body for Uttar Pradesh, and they are now very proactive. There is also an organization, Invest India, which can do a hand-holding for you as soon as you send us a query. So you have all these options. You could start with any of the gentlemen you see on your screen. You could write to the High Commission. We'll be happy to take this forward. But all I can say is that you have a very, very responsive new regime at the level of policymakers in India, which will be happy to respond to your queries and give you pointers, both at the federal and the state level.
Thank you, Mr. Visaria. And the next question is from Nick. It asks, how does Indigo differ from the Canadian Trade Commissioner service? How do you differentiate yourself?
So that's a very good question, Nick. As I said, I was speaking with the Chief Trade Commissioner just a couple of days ago, and I've known her for the last 5 or 6 years. But we were talking about the fact that we offer the service where we actually make the rubber hit the road. I think that's where we differentiate ourselves. We have the connections in industry. We have the connections right across India in different industries and sectors. That's exactly what Ned was talking about as well, where we very carefully vet out the final, the partners that you can work with. We go and meet with the partners well before the Canadian company does. In the case of the Trade Commissioner service, they have an excellent advisory service. But this last mile is one thing that we see that's missing. And again, the Trade Commissioner service being a larger body, I think it isn't very easy for them to focus on each case on a micro basis and offer micro solutions.
May I just add to that, Irvin?
Mm-hmm.
I have had some experience with the Trade Commissioner services, which is absolutely excellent. However, having said that, like Irvin mentioned, it is not custom made. It is not customized to your specific need. And I think that would be the differentiator between a consultant versus a government body. With the very best of interest, the volume that they have to handle is much more. So they can give you great information and advice on a general basis. But when it comes to real hand-holding, one-on-one, individual case-based help, I think you should go to individual consultants, in this case, Indigo, as we are talking about.
I think with that, we've reached the end of the questions that we have. So Irvin, would you like to conclude the session today?
So ladies and gentlemen, if you have no more questions, thank you all so much for having participated in this webinar today. I would just like to reiterate that starting with the Government of India, ICICI Bank, the Indian private sector, and consultants such as ourselves, all of us are available here to be of service to you. As Indo-Canadians, again, we're looking at how do we grow the business between the two countries, and I think that's our goal. Before I conclude, I'm just going to ask Mr. Bisaria if you'd like to say something to close this session.
Thank you, Irvin. Thank you for having me here. And I think you've concluded very well exactly what I would say, that this is an exciting corridor, the India-Canada corridor, growing. As India's economy grows, I think the opportunities will grow. And you will find a much more responsive India at every level. And of course, you have a whole menu of options. The Indian government is there to help, the Canadian government and the Trade Commissioner's offices. And for greater granularity and greater degrees of help and the value addition, you have the consultants and the banks available to you. So please do take the plunge. Please do give it a thought. And thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. And I wish you all have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.